guys. Now, before I get into it, I just want to address the title of this video, which is When Every Boy is Guilty, Every Girl Becomes a Monster. Now, the pretense of this title is basically that if every boy is presumed guilty, then every girl is a potential monster and can ruin a boy. Right? And we're seeing this with the Kavanaugh trials. We've seen it with Emmett Till way back in the day, the young black man that was accused falsely. Now, the article is written by a lady called Sarah Hoyt, and I've actually skimmed through the titles of the rest of her articles, and I've even had a quick look at some of them. She actually seems pretty switched on to what's going on. Her bio says she lives in Colorado with her husband, 2 sons, and too many cats. Maybe she's preparing for divorce. I don't know. Whatever the case, guys, please, if you're a father or even a mother and you have a son or sons, if you have nephews, if you have friends that have got sons or nephews or brothers, if you know anyone that has a male in their life that they care about, particularly if that male is in school right now, you need to share this with them. Please sit with me and listen through this, because this is basically what we are gearing up for in schools. Now, Sarah says, I have a problem when I get angry. The problem is that I've long ago learned, particularly in dealing with traditional publishers, to get depressed instead of letting myself go berserk. Mostly because when you're dealing with publishers, they're not near enough to vent your berserker on, so you just end up hurting yourself. Whoever said stress is the feeling you get when you can't strangle someone who righteously deserves it was right on the money. Lately, I've been getting deeply, profoundly depressed, which is why I've been so silent. Yes, post 3 on how to write short stories is on the way. So many things are winding up. It's not even worth listing them all. The most proximal one, though, is the accusation against Kavanaugh, which, even if true, would not be in any way actionable or, barring this behavior persisting into adulthood, mean anything about his character as a grown-up. High school has always been a weird and psychologically unstable part of anyone's growing up years, partly because we're all learning the ropes of what adult means, and partly because we're isolated with other kids, also all learning the ropes. It's not the best system, no. But this nonsense with the accusations against Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh, which, by the way, not only doesn't rise to credible, but is barely past the level of inane ramblings of crazy woman on the corner, is being given credibility. And the Senate is bending over backwards to give that crazy woman the chance to ramble at them any way she wants to, which is a symptom of deeper corruption. Now, men, I really want you to sit down, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is going to get really deep, and it's really going to hit close to home for a lot of you. This morning, I woke up to an article in my inbox about a student at a middle school in Colorado Springs who was arrested and suspended for sexual harassment, with allegations about as credible as the ones brought against Kavanaugh. And I want to throw up and hit people. Let me tell you about my experience with Colorado Springs area public schools while raising 2 boys. In Manitou Springs, in 1st grade, my older son started writing poems to girls. Yes, I realize this is a weird thing, but he comes by it naturally. Both his paternal grandfather and his paternal uncle have written entire books of poems to various girls and women, starting at about that age. Right? 1st grade. Starting at about that age. And his mother wrote 300 and some sonnets between the ages of 14 and 18 to a guy who never knew she existed. What none of us ever got was the reaction my oldest son got. I got a phone call saying he was sexually harassing a girl. Since at the age of 6, he didn't know how to spell harassment and would be uncertain on the meaning of sexual, both boys were far less curious than I was at their ages, I begged leave to differ. Marched down to the school like the wrath of mum and demanded proof. Rightly so. At which point I was given a very bad, rather innocent poem. I mean, the boy didn't even say he wanted to kiss her, just that she was pretty and her eyes were like stars. I pointed this out. I was sarcastic. It was resolved that it would be forgotten if he just kept his poems to himself, which honestly, every poet should be encouraged to do, since the collapse of society starts with open mic poetry nights. This should have been seen as a sign of things to come, but I wasn't aware of the insanity stalking this land. Not yet. So I assumed it was Manitou Springs, and someone had overindulged in hash brownies. Next came elementary school in Colorado Springs. Younger son, slower developing than his brother, and at times completely unaware of the difference in Viva la Difference, was in 3rd grade. Things were going well. We'd finally got him to admit he could read. You don't want to know. I don't know what that means, but I'm going to continue. And he'd stopped turning in drawn homework comics, truly, and had also had a part in the class's Shakespeare play. Good for him. I was at the dentist. We lived in the old North End, the first trolley car suburb, meaning it was about 1.5 miles to downtown, 4 blocks north to the elementary school, and 4 blocks south to my dentist. I'm sitting in the waiting room. The dentist is a strict Christian and his magazines are the cleanest sort. His clientele mostly elderly. I get a phone call. This mother that's writing this article gets a phone call and hear words coming out of my mouth. And all the elderly women staring at me in horror because they were a rather special kind of words. So I told the elderly ladies, the school is telling me they're calling the police because my 8-year-old touched a girl. At which point they nodded understandingly because little old ladies aren't fools. That, and they know what feminists are up to these days. They've seen it, right? They're 80 years old. They've seen what's been going over the last 50 or 60, and they know that it's no good. I had walked to the dentist partly because my parking skills suck and trying to park in the general downtown area isn't worth it, and partly because it was a lovely fall day. So I ran 8 blocks up the street at top speed. I got there in the state you'd expect and was having trouble speaking because I was out of breath, at which point the school called a security guard because they were afraid I was going to do them violence. Yeah, which tells you what their consciences were telling them. I finally got the gist of the complaint and was told that my son had confessed. I told them to shut up and let my son tell it. Apparently, my son had a little friend who happened to be a girl. He was trying to get her attention so they could play the space game. Yes, I know what that was. My kids played it all day long. It was basically an RPG where they pretended to be space explorers. There were other kids in the way, and she couldn't hear him shout. So he reached through the other kids and touched her 3 times, at which point all hell broke loose. Apparently a playground guard, I'm going to bet that this particular playground guard was a feminist. Apparently a playground guard thought this girl was very pretty and all the little boys were interested in her. Yes, 3rd grade. Is anyone else getting a creepy vibe? She says. So when younger son touched her on the butt, playground guard's version of course, the playground guard knew what she had to do. She descended upon the kids, whisked the little girl to counseling and the little boy to the principal's office to be threatened with suspension and the police. So this playground guard's just taken it upon herself to drag this little girl to counseling for being tapped a couple of times to get her attention, because apparently she must be so distraught at having any male make any sort of contact with her, even on the shoulder, without her explicit direct consent and request. I asked my son right there in front of all of them what he'd confessed to. He told me they'd told him touching someone on the butt was sexual harassment, so he'd confessed to that. I asked him why it was sexual harassment. Bewildered stare. I asked him what sexual means. He understood it pertained to genitals. But being very young and frankly not sexually aware at all, he had no clue what this had to do with the rear end. I glared at them and told them how ridiculous this was. They backed down and said they'd give him just a suspension. I said they'd give him nothing, or I would make them the laughingstock of every blog and magazine in the nation. Eventually, they backed down. Roll forward 3 years. Now, this is where it gets particularly nasty. And this is where the title of this video really comes in to play and where it will all start to make sense. Our youngest son, a happy, gregarious child who had some issues. He has sensory processing disorder. Sorry, I'm just unplugging my charger here. No, it's not made up. Yes, it was causing him serious trouble in class as he moved to middle school, which was bigger and noisier and a slight speech impediment, but never had trouble having friends or enjoying school. The incident in the playground 3 years ago before was well and truly forgotten, though I'll note it was the same school. Suddenly he was being given detentions practically daily. We were told he was aggressive. We were told a lot of vague stuff that made no sense. Because the child is introverted and also one of those people who will fight his own battles, we couldn't get sense out of him either. It all came to a head when they called us. Yes, saying they were about to call the police because he had kissed a little girl against her will on the lunch line. The problem was that while in the lunch line, he'd been speaking to his Spanish teacher. Also, there were cameras in the lunchroom filming every interaction. Now, guys, if you go back to my thumbnail in this video, you'll notice the hashtags that come up when I typed hashtag BELIE. Everything that is there is about basically believing women and not ever questioning them. Now, I'm going to quickly read you the hashtags, just so you know what I'm talking about. Hashtag believe women. Hashtag believe survivors. Hashtag believe her. Hashtag believe all women. And hashtag believe Christine, aka Christine Blasey Ford. We pointed this out, that there were cameras in the lunchroom filming every interaction. They said yes, but girls don't lie about these things. Yeah, because Emma Solkowicz didn't lie. Nikki Uvino didn't lie. None of these women that lied, right? I'll continue. But girls don't lie about these things, so it must have happened another time. The words, "We'll sue you to your back teeth. I'll make it my life's mission to ruin everyone involved in this," were uttered. It was dropped. But the incidents continued and escalated, and we became aware of what was happening, though we only pieced the background of it together almost a year later, after this poor kid's been going through a year of torture. The background was this. Not one, not two, but 18. That's 10 plus 8. 20 minus 2, 18 girls. Most of them children of the staff, had decided my son was, and I'll use their term, retarded, and therefore dangerous. I'll point out that the speech impediment was the only reason they could even think so, and they decided to make us remove him from the school / get the school to expel him by accusing him of harassing them. It included such charming incidents as claiming he blocked the door to them so they couldn't leave the school on a day when he was homesick, that he'd called them lesbians, when that was a word he A, didn't know the meaning of, and B, couldn't pronounce because of said speech impediment. That he'd followed them home, throwing rocks and threatening them on a day I'd picked him up in the car. In fact, I started making a practice of this, picking them up in the car, that is, because obviously him walking home leaves him wide open to allegations like what they're making here, which is completely false. Which is why one day, parked under a tree, I watched my son leave the school pursued by one of these delicate flowers who was throwing rocks at him and calling him filthy names. Our son, the poor kid, became clinically depressed. And I mean, guys, seriously, is it any surprise to any of you that he's becoming clinically depressed with this sort of shit going on? Like, it's just freaking nuts. It's seriously nuts. Sorry, it's the page just refreshed, so I lost my spot. Bear with me a moment. Like, seriously, guys, I cannot even begin to imagine how hard I would freaking flip if this shit happened to my son. Here we go. Our son became clinically depressed. He gained 50 pounds. He slept all the time. The administration and the school entrusted with his education told us only that girls don't make things up, so he must be doing something. We took him to a psychologist who diagnosed the sensory issues, so he got treatment and finally overcame the speech issues, which is great. Good for him. And it's good that the mother actually took steps to have this revolved rather than just trying to say, well, they should accept you for who you are, because sometimes that shit doesn't work in school. So common sense prevails, apparently. Now, this psychologist also told us the school was toxic and we should remove him. Trust the kid who is my mental and emotional clone to set both feet and say he wouldn't be run off. Good on the kid. So he finished 6th grade there and was homeschooled then for a year, during which he did 2 years. Nice one, Mum. So he's been homeschooled for year 7, but actually done year 7 and 8 in the 1 year. So he's actually 1 year ahead of these bullies by the time he gets out of that 1 year. So that when he went back to school, he was not in the same grade as his pursuers and eventually changed to another school for reasons of the program offered. Note, he never had any problems at any other school. However, 4 interesting incidents followed. Incident 1, the summer after 6th grade, we were all working in our front yard when friends came by to kidnap my husband and me for ice cream. We left the 2 boys. The older was then over 6 feet tall to work in the yard and went off. We came back half an hour later to find all the tools, including the expensive electric rototiller, abandoned in the yard and the 2 boys locked in the house. The older son, who, trust me, besides being built like the proverbial brick shithouse, doesn't scare easily, then explained that a group of these girls, he thought there were 18, but he didn't count, came by, started taunting and harassing them, and came into our yard through the gate. 2 of them picked up gardening tools like a shovel and a rake and started threatening the boys. Which is when older son dragged younger inside and locked the door behind them, and they sat and waited for us. Incident 2. The following summer, 1 full year after I'd pulled the kid out of school, someone egged our house around his bedroom window. A full year, a full 12 months, 365 days, give or take a few. And keep in mind, this kid had, at the time, had no other contact with neighborhood kids. He was being homeschooled and was at home pretty much all the time. Incident 3. When younger son went into high school that fall, his French teacher called us, concerned. You see, he liked to go 2 blocks away to a little cafe where he studied. For some days, he'd been avoiding it though. The teacher told us she'd seen some girls surround him and punch/kick him. Yep, same girls. Incident 4. 2 years later, older son needed driving lessons, so we got brochures and called one of the men. We didn't know he was the father of one of these 18 girls. Older son went for his lesson to find himself yelled at and told that the school, and I quote, shouldn't put retarded kids with normal kids, and how, and I quote, dangerous his little brother was, all the while behind the wheel for the first time. Older son, possessor of an immense dignity, even at 16, politely informed the man that his brother was in no way mentally deficient, having an IQ estimated above the 99.9th percentile, at which point the man then yelled at the older son that the younger son then was a psychopath and dangerous. Note, this was all before the hashtag #MeToo madness, and also that the girls were using accusations of harassment as a tool to get what they wanted, i.e. a kid they considered abnormal or icky, yeah, he's just icky, removed from school. For no other reason that he's icky or that they don't like him or they don't want him around. Note, also that teachers and parents implicitly believed that everything the little idiots said was the sacred truth, or didn't dare question it. Why? I don't know. Oh, I know. Vagina. The kid hasn't been born who doesn't lie. And, or a kid, oh, I mean, I'm going to say a kid. There's no kids that have been born that after being able to speak for even a year or two haven't lied at some point about something tiny. And the stew of hormones in middle school makes girls who develop faster than boys into drama queens and bitch goddesses supreme. Her words, not mine. I'm not saying I disagree, I'm just saying it's not my words. Now, fast forward to this incident reported today in a Colorado Springs middle school. Heavens, I hope it's the same. This bad, a crazy, infecting more than one school would be scary. Boy, 13, arrested, cuffed, and dragged from school over hashtag #MeToo allegations. I've actually done a video on that before already. Now consider the puerile origins of the incident. Keith decided to change his Snapchat avatar into a black Bitmoji character. One of his friends, a girl, immediately noticed and within minutes told him he needed to change it back. She said it was insensitive and racist for a white person to use a black character as an avatar. Keith, stubborn as any 8th grader, laughed it off and said he wasn't going to change it. The next day at school, the girl, according to Keith, then started telling everyone he was a racist. The harassment and accusations persisted for days. Other students began threatening to beat up Keith. Physical violence from the left, who would have thought? Saying they were going to jump him after school for being racist. Then the girl and 3 other female classmates took it to the next level, appearing to take a page from the Feinstein handbook. Surprise, surprise. Appearing to take a page from the Feinstein handbook on how to destroy your political enemies. They appeared before the vice principal to accuse Keith of sexual harassment. I thought it was just racism, but now it's sexual harassment somehow. Oh, that's right, because sexual harassment gets taken more seriously than anything else. And they didn't want calling him racist over a black Bitmoji character to get thrown out. They really wanted justice done, even though it's not actually justice to take someone down over that. But they wanted social justice done. Sounds more like it. They appeared before the vice principal to accuse Keith of sexual harassment and assault stemming back to the summer. One of the girls, according to Keith, identifies as a feminist. Surprise, surprise. He's pretty scared. I was scared. He was crying when they arrested him. We've never been close to anything like this. We don't know anybody criminal. It's not something we ever thought we'd have to deal with. Dennis, 32, who works as a plumber, says, I think the whole political climate is what is motivating this. Anytime you disagree with someone, now you accuse them of sexual assault and automatically they're a victim and you're a monster. It's so highly publicized now. That's just the answer, the father of Keith said. Keith was charged with unlawful sexual conduct and harassment, which comes with a maximum sentence of 2 years in a juvenile detention center. 2 years in juvie for changing your fucking Snapchat avatar? Are you serious? And the family must wait until a court date on October 27 to learn what exactly the girls claim Keith did to them. So they actually don't have time to prepare their defense. They just have to basically hope for the best on the whim of these girls. But a clue emerged the night before when one of the girls' parents phoned the Baileys. Her mother just gave us a call and said she'd found out that Keith had been inappropriately touching her daughter, and she just wanted to let us know, she said. I know Keith is a good kid. Maybe he just went down the wrong path. She obviously believed her daughter, but she said it happened at the football game last week. The problem with that is my wife was at the football game the whole time. My son was there with his girlfriend and my wife didn't want him unattended, so she had her eyes on him the whole time. My wife tells this girl's mother. That's funny. I was there watching the whole time and he didn't leave my sight and he was nowhere near your daughter, Dennis recalls. He was hanging out with his girlfriend. He wasn't running around molesting other girls. The mother then changed the story, still believing her daughter, saying it must have been a different football game. Because it definitely happened because my daughter said it and my daughter wouldn't lie. Hashtag believe all women. Note the puerile, ridiculous origin of why the girls were mad at him. I mean, if anything, taking a black character as an avatar is the opposite of racism. But these girls didn't know that. A stew of hodgepodge of racism and dog whistles and cultural appropriation has been poured into their heads. But all they know is that he's doing socially unapproved things. Cue NPCs. Socially unapproved things. And that this is double plus ungood. In the way of middle school girls, they want to enforce conformity. And everyone knows if you accuse someone of sexually harassing you, that gets them removed. And people treat you as a victim and are nice to you. I can't begin to express my horror and disgust at this. I have no words, just a profound depression. This is not just wrong. This is evil. Straight up evil. The little boy might change schools and, like my son, be all right. The girls? As with my son's harassers, there might be no remedy for them unless they hit bottom, realize what they are, and decide to change. And very few people do that. Very few people do it. And once you realize you can control others and force them to dance to your tune, few people ever step back. Few people can. And chances are, never having been taught to examine their actions or be self-reflective, these girls, now women, will never, ever even be able to realize they're not perfect. Now multiply this by all the kids in school. Yes, every time I publish one of these, I get people telling me that their schools are fine, their kids are fine. Are they? Or have you just never interrogated them on their assumptions and what they're being taught? Do you just not want to know? If you can, and by the way, guys, I totally agree with this woman on this point. If you can, homeschool your kids. If you can't, please realize they learn all the time, not just what is said to them. No, they learn what's enacted around them all the time. And this is why so many young girls, in my personal opinion, are using Me Too, are using sexual harassment claims as a political and social tool and weapon to attack others, because they see what's happening around them and they see the benefit that they can extract from this. Blasey Ford got what, close to $1 million US in her GoFundMe, even though she didn't pay any lawyers' fees because it was all pro bono. financial reward for false claims. Well, or at least why do I believe to be false? I'm just saying. And what girls are learning in our society, partly through warped women like that playground guard who decided kids interacting was sexual harassment. When younger son was in 3rd grade, is that all men are dangerous, evil, and guilty of something. And that the women accusing them of made up stuff is not only all right, and not only brings power, but is somehow heroic and gets the girl or woman praise and adulation. We're handing females weapons with which to destroy innocent males. I don't care what the imbalance of power was in the past. No male alive is responsible for how people lived 100 years ago. And there were reasons, biologically, mostly, for that imbalance of power, which had nothing to do with men being oppressors. But this is the way civilization ends. Not with a bang, but with a "he touched me" decades ago at a party occurring in a place and time I can't recall. And all of society plays along, treats this as credible. The school establishment has been doing it for well over a decade. My younger son is 24. If you can, homeschool. Right? And seriously, if I were ever to have kids, if I were ever going to put myself at risk, I mean, I'm at least homeschooling. I'm just going to tell you that right now. There's no way I would risk that happening to my sons or my kids. It's just freaking nuts what is going on. Like, oh man, what kind of world are we raising our kids in? I really dislike that this particular article on this mobile keeps refreshing itself. Give me a sec, guys. I'll be right at the end. Please stick with me. And by the way, thank you all so much for joining. And I really do hope you share this with anyone that has kids, that is a school kid, or anyone that's just got friends or family or sons or nephews. Anyone that is associated with a young male that's at school needs to see and read this article. So please share this. Please comment. Please smash the thumbs up, guys. Let's get this trending. This really needs to get out to so many people. Share it on school groups. Share it on mothers groups. I don't care. Just get the word out there how serious this situation is. If you can, homeschool. Take your kids out of the cesspit. If you can't, homeschool after school. Make sure you know what they're being taught. Correct it. Remember that private schools hire the same teachers / follow the same rules as public schools. Do not give your daughter's fantastical accusations any more credence than you'd give your son's. She might not be a bad kid, but society is teaching her bad things. And if you don't stop it, she will become a monster. That is the truth. This is what Marxist group guilt and group victimhood has caused. Stop it now. Teach your children well, or we all shall burn. And you know what? If you know any young girls that are at school, particularly young girls who have got mothers that let them get away with this shit, shame the fuck out of them. Shame them. If they ever even think of doing something like this, because shame is the only tactic we have to make people behave themselves. Women are using shame all the time to get men to conform to the way they think men should behave. Right? They're using shame with these sexual allegation scandals. They know shame works on men. Right? Don't be shamed into not speaking your truth. Don't be shamed into not defending yourself. Stand up, be strong, be a man, own your shit. Say no, right? And if people accuse you, stand up, speak out loud and proud, like what Brett Kavanaugh did, like what Trump does, right? Regardless of whether you like Trump, I don't care. I'm not making this a political thing, but I'm just saying he calls it like it is. He's not afraid to call out the bullshit. By the way, a big thank you to the gentleman. We got Wes for the generous donations. I really appreciate you, bro. And we also got I think it was Daniel Corica that dropped a donation for me. I really appreciate that, brother. Daniel, here we go. Perfect example of homeschooling. Daniel Corica, thank you for the $5, brother. He says, I was home taught for 3rd, 4th, and 5th did 3rd and 4th in the same year. Thanks, Mum. That's amazing, right? And especially with the bloated bullshit curriculum in the public schools, in the school system now, with these feminist teachers teaching social justice instead of maths and budgeting and science and physics and all the shit you actually need in this world, right? If you're focusing on what's important, you can actually smash through the curriculum so much faster. You can do 2 years in a year easily without all of the bullshit. And thank you so much, Dynamite Rabbit. He says, good stuff, Sid. I appreciate you, Dynamite Rabbit. Because, you know, this has got to get out there. This has really got to get out there. School is a dangerous place for young boys, especially if they're not the hot kid, especially if they're not popular. And even then, the rape allegations are likely to come later down the track, right? Because young girls and young women are being indoctrinated to think that there's so much as a man touching you on the shoulder. Like if someone comes over and goes, hey, how you doing? That's sexual harassment. Are you fucking serious right now? This is where we're at. Anyway, guys, I'm going to bounce for now. I've got some awesome topics lined up for the next few days, but I just wanted to say I really appreciate you all. I really appreciate your support. I can't believe I'm almost at 11,000 subscribers. I'm so humbled that I'm able to share this word with so many people and help so many people realize what's going on in the world and how to navigate that the best way possible. All right, brothers and mothers that are watching this as well, I appreciate you all. Thank you so much again, man. Wes, Daniel, and big ups to you, Dynamite, for that very generous donation. I appreciate you guys. If any of you others want to donate, paypal.me/Sydney MGTOW. Really appreciate you. If you want to get one of these sweet shirts, I got long sleeve tees, short sleeve tees. I've got hoodies and I've got sweatshirts in all sorts of different colors. Check out my represent.com store below. And if you haven't yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button and the bell next to it. Hope to see you in the next video. I got some good stuff coming up. I think you're going to enjoy it. And I promise it won't be as long as this one. But for those of you who stuck around for the whole video, thank you. And I'll see you soon. Peace.